I am yours, and you are mine. Journey into the unknown. Galina Victorona, I am almost home, says Arcady into the phone as the emergency call reaches him on the wintry snow-covered road. On the other end of the line is the head physician of the hospital where he has been working for almost 10 years. Arcady is a dedicated and responsible surgeon, but lately he's been overwhelmed by a great fatigue. He would most like to forget the hospital for a while. Leaving everything behind and traveling the world is his great wish. But the voice from the caller brings him back from his dreams. On this snowy winter evening, Arcady is almost alone on the well-paved highway that leads to his hometown. Behind him is a multi-hour exhausting operation, so Arcady is grateful that he does not have to concentrate on too much traffic. The white, icy band of lonely road shines promisingly in the setting sun. Actually, the surgeon looks forward to his warm bed. But Galina Victorona asks him to return and operate on an emergency patient with acute appendicitis. Overwhelmed by fatigue, Arcady suggests to his boss that the on-duty surgeon, Tillman, perform the operation. The young assistant surgeon has long had the desire to demonstrate his skills without anyone looking over his shoulder. Arcady, who could apply for his pension in 6 months, is very interested in a capable successor. Now the opportunity arises to strengthen the confidence of the sympathetic colleague. Galina Victorona is convinced and ends the conversation. A promising sight. Only now does Arcady notice that it's snowing again. Despite the headlights, visibility is at most 5 meters. Suddenly, a dark figure appears on the road, seemingly out of nowhere. Heavily braking causes the car to spin before it stops. Directly in front of the car, the nostrils of a huge elk are steaming. He looks at Arcady as if he wants to say something. Then he goes to the side and leans over an unidentifiable bundle at the roadside ditch before slowly walking away. The surgeon frees himself from his painfully cutting chest belt, gets out of the car, and stops in front of the bundle. He carefully sweeps some freshly fallen snow to the side and realizes that it is a person. A pale girl, more dead than alive, lies without a jacket in the merciless cold. Arcady cannot explain how she got there. There's no nearby vehicle or piece of luggage with papers. Arcady does not have time to think about whether the girl may have been thrown from a vehicle in an accident. He knows he must act immediately. Secret allies. Arcady carefully brings the unconscious girl into his car and calls Galina Victorona. He explains to her that he will arrive at the hospital with an emergency patient in about 30 minutes. Galina should prepare everything for a CT and other required tests. When Arcady arrives at the emergency room with the girl, a nurse with a mobile bed is already ready for transport to the examination room. Carefully, Arcady places the girl on the stretcher. She may be about 20 years old. Her features seem strangely familiar to Arcady. The CT scan reveals a mild head injury, but the bruise cannot be the cause of the deep unconsciousness of the girl. Further tests are required, and acute kidney problems are identified. This type of kidney damage could not have been caused by the cold. The girl needs a kidney transplant, but without papers, she shouldn't even be admitted to the hospital. Arcady carefully inquires about a free bed, and Nurse Masha is quickly on his side. The girl with a head injury and failing kidney can be placed in a small, single room where it's possible to connect her to an artificial kidney. Then Arcady calls the police. The investigator introduces himself as Andrzej Borisovich. He has many questions, but is still waiting for the results of the forensic investigation at the accident site. The girl is not conscious and cannot be questioned. Although she has only been in the hospital for a few hours, she already seems to have some secret friends here. Not only are Nurse Masha and Arcady filled with compassion and sacrifice, but young assistant Dr. Pavel Tillman also recognizes something special in this girl and admires her delicate features. Pavel feels just as comfortable in her presence as he does with Arcady, his fatherly mentor. Medical tests have revealed that the girl has little chance of survival without a kidney transplant. Pavel would love to help, but he's not a transplant specialist, and there are long waiting lines for donor kidneys. Furthermore, the girl does not have any papers, making her stay in the hospital illegal. Nevertheless, Arkady has already instructed the laboratory to determine through blood group determination who is eligible as a kidney donor. Ideally, relatives of the girl can be found based on the results. Both Arkady and Pavel are considering whether it would make sense to stay in the hospital's emergency rooms. The mystical rescue. Suddenly, Arkady is interrupted from his thoughts by the ringing of his telephone. On the display, he sees an unknown number. When Arkady answers the call, he's greeted by Major Sasanow of the Ministry of Emergency Situations. He informs Arkady that there's been a gas explosion in his apartment building and it can no longer be temporarily inhabited. Until the building is reconstructed, he will be provided a room in a sanatorium. Arkady can't believe it. If he hadn't been stopped by the elk and hadn't found the girl, he might not be alive now. So the elk has saved not only the girl but also himself. At that moment, Arkady is too tired to think about it. He falls into the bed of the emergency room and immediately falls asleep. The meaning of trust. The next morning, the snow starts to thaw and the police forensic team finds nothing at the girl's location on the street that indicates what happened. Now, Arkady's car is also being investigated for signs of a possible accident. As the surgeon leaves the hospital to see his apartment and the new accommodation, he feels Galina Viktorovna's questioning glances. Up to this point, the chief physician knew him as a reliable colleague. Arkady is insecure. What must she be thinking of him now? That he's hiding a girl in the hospital and blowing up his apartment? Upon arriving home, Arkady finds that there is hardly anything left of the apartment. The major had not exaggerated. The sanatorium is near the house of his colleague, Pavel Tillman. During their next duty together, Pavel invites his paternal friend Arkady to his home. Arkady is full of admiration for the exquisite atmosphere of Pavel's bachelor pad. He recalls the time when he was that age. Back then, he got married to start a family, he tells the young resident. When it turned out that his wife could not have children, the couple longed even more for their own offspring. They relied on modern reproductive methods, and Arkady donated semen for artificial fertilization. However, his wife became seriously ill and later died. Now Arkady speaks to Pavel like a son. They talk about the girl in the hospital. It is not possible to transport the young patient anywhere. Pavel and Arkady agree on this. Both of them get tested as potential donors. The elective affinity. The next day, the blood test results from the lab arrive. The result is unbelievable. Arkady's kidney is 100% compatible with the girl's body. The surgeon immediately begins to organize the transplantation. He himself has little experience in this field. He's only assisted in a liver transplantation once. But Arkady has friends who owe him a lot and who have a lot to thank him for. With the help of his former classmate Oleg, who has become an expert in this field, he manages to assemble a transplant team that arrives at the clinic within 3 days. Arkady is surprised that Oleg immediately asked him if he's related to the girl. He thinks it has to do with the required papers and takes the comment as a hint on how they can be filled out. A kidney transplant outside the waiting list is only allowed between relatives. So, Arkady enters in the girl's patient record that she is his daughter. The long-awaited ray of light. On the day of the operation, the anesthesiologist gives Arkady an anesthetic that is fair to his aging body and puts him into a permanent haze. The young girl is operated on with full anesthesia with a time delay. When Arkady comes to, he sees the freshly operated patient in the bed next to him. Oleg comes in and inquires about Arkady's well-being. The girl is stable and no longer connected to the ventilator. Suddenly, she opens her eyes. "Where am I?" Oleg and Arkady hear the successfully operated patient ask. "Please remain calm and avoid sudden movements," says Oleg before asking her name. "My name is Nastya," Oleg and Arkady hear the girl say. The nurse, Masha, who has come in, has tears in her eyes. Arkady finds the name beautiful. It means the resurrected. A few days later, it's already clear that Nastya's body is showing no rejection reactions whatsoever. The new kidney is functioning. investigator Andrei Borusovich arrives to question Nastya. It turns out that despite her young years, she is already a successful author. During the fateful winter evening, Nastya was on her way to present her new book in a nearby town. She agreed to take a hitchhiker, but he decided to steal her car. Nastya can't remember anything else. The investigator leaves to verify the statements. I am yours and you are mine. 2 days later, Andrei Borusovich confirms Nastya's statements. He's already contacted her mother. For Nastya and Arkady, the investigator has a special surprise. During the review of the hospital papers, the forensic medicine compared the DNAs of the two. The DNA analysis showed a high match. Arkady is Nastya's biological father with a 99.9% certainty. As Andrei Borusovich says goodbye, he looks at amazed faces. How can that be? Arkady asks in Nastya's direction. Although he doesn't have an explanation yet, he begins to smile happily. His feeling tells him that it is the truth. Nastya tells him that her mother became pregnant through a sperm donation. 5 years later, Nastya is Mrs. Tillman, Arkady is Pavel's father-in-law and proud grandfather of a 3-year-old grandson. What do you think of the story? Do you believe the elk that stopped Arkady near the girl's nearly frozen body had some sense of the connection? Do you think it was mere coincidence that Arkady avoided death by turning around to try to help the girl? Share your thoughts in the comments below.